Oh, hi. Didn't see you there. I was just reading about one of the most famous civil rights activists. You see, the civil rights movement was proved to be a major turning point for racism in the United States. People began to change, opinions were shifting, white supremacy was challenged, and prejudice was threatened. The court case Brown v. Board of Education desegregated public schools, leading to the desegregation of all public places in the mid-20th century. The Montgomery bus boycott, initiated by Rosa Parks, led to the desegregation of buses. Martin Luther King Jr. was inspired and called for unity among the races, and he established himself as a prominent leader in the civil rights movement. It seemed that whites and blacks may finally live together peacefully in a world of mixed cultures. However, as unity was being preached, another opinion came into being, one that preached of violence and separation. This man became a very influential leader among the African Americans in the civil rights movement and threatened the potential unification of the races. This contrasting opinion revolutionized against the revolution itself. This opinion was that of Malcolm X.
During his early childhood, Malcolm X was introduced to a man named Garvey. He founded the United Negro Improvement Association, and his goals were to create a country that was independent of any white. Years of oppression by the whites, including eviction and the murdering of his father, made Malcolm bitter towards the whites. When he was older, he got into crime with a new friend and wound up in jail. There he learned about Elijah Muhammad. He was told that the world of Islam could offer him a way to control his bad behavior and turn his life into a positive one. When he was released from jail 7 years later, he moved to Detroit with his brother, where he began spreading the word of the Islamic faith. He criticized African Americans for trying to please whites.
I think you'll find, sir, that there will come a time when black people wake up and become intellectually independent enough to think for themselves, as other humans are intellectually independent enough to think for themselves. Then the black man will think like a black man, and he will feel for other black people. And this new thinking and feeling will cause black people to stick together. And then at that point, you'll have a situation where when you attack one black man, you are attacking all black men. And this type of black thinking will cause all black people to stick together.
During this time, Malcolm X became friends with Elijah Muhammad, whose movement Malcolm X was a part of. He was sent to other cities to spread the word of his teachings. Soon he became a representative of the Black Muslim organization. He began giving speeches calling out against segregation and advocated instead for separation. That is, establishing a community of African Americans outside the reach of white influence. He didn't approve of Martin Luther King Jr.'s turn the other cheek philosophy, and he said instead that his race should obtain freedom by any means necessary.
One of the first things that the independent African nations did was to form an organization called the Organization of African Unity. The purpose of our organization of Afro-American Unity, which has the same aim and objective, to fight whoever gets in our way, to bring about the complete independence of people of African descent here in the Western Hemisphere, and first here in the United States, and bring about the freedom of these people by any means necessary. Since self-preservation is the first law of nature, we assert the Afro-Americans' right to self-defense. The Constitution of the United States of America clearly affirms the right of every American citizen to bear arms.
By contrast, Martin Luther King Jr. spoke out against violence and instead asked people to rely on civil disobedience to get their point across. This, in the end, proved to be more favorable.
These young men practice civil disobedience. Civil disobedience is the refusal to abide by an order of the government or of the state or even of the court that your conscience tells you is unjust. Civil disobedience is based on a commitment to conscience. In other words, one who practices civil disobedience is obedient to what he considers a higher law.
However, Malcolm X remained influential among many of the bitter-minded African Americans. As violence broke out, he left the Islamic community and continued to speak in favor of gaining unity among the African Americans through non-religious means. However, his abandonment of the Islamic community proved to be disastrous for him, as he was then shot dead in 1965 by members of his former organization.
Malcolm X was Louis Farrakhan's mentor, his teacher in the Nation of Islam. They believed that the white man was evil, that the black and white races should live separately. When Malcolm X revealed publicly that Elijah Muhammad, the leader of the Nation of Islam, was guilty of impregnating several of his teenage secretaries, Farrakhan was outraged. On February 21st, 1965, as Malcolm spoke in New York City's Audubon Ballroom, members of the Nation of Islam opened fire, killing him in front of hundreds of his supporters.
Though his vision of a separate African-American society was never fully realized, Malcolm X helped the oppressed to feel an unprecedented sense of unity. His words inspired people to rise up and protest against injustices that were put upon them. And to this day, Malcolm X remains one of the most influential speakers of the civil rights movement.